triggering systems. So we're all out in our events. And my mom
So sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
Didn't this work yesterday?
And you can hear stuff going on.
So you can tell it's working because oh no, what'd you do? Nothing? Okay, this should probably go down here, do you think, so it doesn't? Oh, I don't know. Okay, and I put this on my desk and my password's in here, so I just say, yes.
Yes.
Watch the ocean. This way, this way.
All right, now we're ready.
This way. Call meeting to order. And we'll do introductions and we'll start right over there with Aaron.
All right, hello everyone, I'm Erin Gouch. I am a member of the school board here in Atlanta. Hi, Woodward Wolford, school board budget committee member.
Larry Daniel, budget committee member.
Shelley Brown, budget committee member. Susan Elliott, superintendent. Jennifer Griffiths, business officer. And budget officer, whatever I am,
Money, your money. Sandy Herring, school board.
Rick Wells, board chair. Joe Daly, school board. Ryan Cheek, school board.
Alex Baldwin, budget committee.
Okay. Election of budget committee officers. You want to be chair again? Sure, I can be chair. Okay. I'll nominate Craig for chair.
Second.
Anybody else want to be chair? Okay, all those in favor of Craig? Looks like you're it. Okay, vice chair. Anybody clamoring to be vice chair? Who's not here? Shelley, you want to be vice chair?
Oh, yeah, who's second?
Seconded,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right, okay, yeah. Got it, sorry. Yeah, no one else wants it.
okay, I'll nominate Shelley to be vice chair.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Looks like you're vice chair. All right, and I'll hand the meeting over to Craig.
Okay. I'm on number 4. Oh, wait a minute, I'm on number 5. We're moving fast.
Moving right along.
Okay, meeting minutes. So we've got January 11th. We do them separately or together?
We can do them together, I think that's how we do it in our board meeting, that's fine. And I did make one correction. Sandy noticed that, her name was spelled wrong on one, so that's, I did make one correction.
What was the correction?
Sandy's name was spelled wrong.
It's not a big deal, it was just for continuity, right?
Yeah.
Mine was wrong.
No, I was standing with a Y.
Oh.
And I have an I, not a Y. Okay.
So, I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes for January 11th and March 7th.
I so moved.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I didn't see. Okay.
One abstain. Budget committee responsibility review. You wanna take it?
Take over, share with that.
Yep.
So I passed out, sent out the proposed budget to everybody, and I just put a presentation together. A lot of the pieces I put in the presentation are copies of what we already have gone through. I just updated a few things. Our budget calendar, budget committee responsibilities, just remembering what the budget committee can and can't do. Receive the budget document, hear the budget message, hold this public meeting, consider any public comment, which we have no public tonight. discuss and revise any budget pieces as needed, and approve the budget and approve the property tax rates and bond levy. And then, whenever there's no setting salaries or employee contract terms or programmatic changes for the budget committee to do. Simple, straightforward, and remember, everybody has the same authority for that budget committee. Just a quick review of our budget cycle. We're in the second box. We published a notice. We're at our public meeting and discussing the budget. And then from here, if it's approved, then we have a public hearing, which is usually held during the school board meeting. And we have to publish a notice with the budget summary for all the community to be able to see. And then the board can adopt the budget. And from there, we set the appropriations and declare the tax levies, all before June 30th, so we can start spending at July 1.
Is there a turn family out to my death, Mrs. Mueller?
My second.
All in favor? Say it's not that hot.
Oh, that's how we're all. Wow.
Everyone's shoulders drop like
I
7 inches as soon as it's down.
White noise is good at some point, but not always. And then I have the same resource links for everybody if they're interested. And Michelle just sent out a new copy of the updated OSBA Budget Committee Handbook, and it's just got some updated dates and timelines, and it's very similar to what was before, just a little bit newer version. And once again, we include our district vision and priorities. This is what guides our process for building the budget and the goals. We went over these pretty well last time and talked about it in our work session. And I'll pull up the budget message since it did not print well. It's pretty small, but Susan wrote this, and then we can kind of go through the pieces of it, since you can't read it in your book. And I'll let Susan take the lead on just covering the budget message and what we concentrated on.
Well, the general premise of it was to be able to take the deep breath that says, after the challenges and unknowns of 23-24, to have an adopted budget that leads us into 24-25, and an adopted state budget, makes all the difference in the world. There were so many unknowns with what was going to be the approved level, what would happen, what was going on with negotiations for us, all those other kinds of things, excuse me, that had us in the throes of trying to figure out what was going on. So we're in a much better position in that way. The other part of that for us is, unlike the majority of the school districts in our area and the state, we have gained students. And so where we're reading now in the paper of a number of districts who are having to make some pretty significant cuts, and some are the result of loss of students. But in some situations, it's also compounded by choices people made to use specifically the COVID funding, the ESSER money, and put a lot of that money towards staffing. And so now that money is gone, those staff numbers are gone. And if you're losing general revenue budget because of loss of students, then you're hit yet again. So we feel real fortunate to be in a place where we don't have to worry about that piece of the puzzle. So it's nice to be in a place where we're moving forward. We had the community, we acknowledged that the community had approved the renewal of our local option levy. And so that was something we could say we've got community support in a great way from that to be able to keep us moving forward. And that we keep looking for ways to be able to take care of business. It also notes that we are focusing on some reserve funds to be able to build some things back that we haven't had for a while. And with the resource we've got, and feeling pretty good about where we are with class sizes and things like that, it's the opportunity. Good shot. To be able to start building up some reserves again, so that we don't run into, the board, for instance, last month heard of the great slew of technology needs. And as we build up reserve, and we've actually found in the way that we budgeted that there are some things that we're going to be able to just do and take care of business, and it's all because of being planful in that way. We're looking at, one of the things we're looking at is the first full year of having taken over food service. And so we're watching that still to be able to see what that's doing in terms of extra that it's costing us as a district, because we don't pull in money to be able to pay the whole thing or not, and how those things work. We also know now that we will be in the same sort of an agreement with Corvallis next year in terms of the provision of food. But we are beginning conversations about what could it look like if we took it on ourselves. We would have to have storage for commodities, freezer space, probably the makings of a central kitchen. And so it's just starting to explore what might that look like if we were to take on more of the pieces of it ourselves. We referenced the additional funds that supplement the general fund, and we're focused here on the general fund. But we'd really like to take a look at what are those other pieces that we can use, and how do we shuffle things around to be able to make it work most appropriately. And then it's really just the conclusion of saying, I'm confident that this budget will answer our needs, that we do have the capability to build up some reserves, and we have a chance to do some proactive looking forward, as opposed to reactionary grab to figure out how we're going to make this work. So that's the gist.
Sorry, it's hard to see up there, the light shining in, is a little bit hard on the screen. But some of the other pieces, as we built the budget that we knew or used as assumptions, if we were in the second year of budgeting, like Susan said, it's a little easier to estimate. We have a higher enrollment for the district, and lower statewide enrollment everywhere has kind of increased the per student funding. So that's helpful for everybody across the state, unless their enrollment has dwindled for some districts. And our teacher experience rating also has gone a little bit, so that's, you can see it in the slide I have with the state school fund calculation. That has increased our allocation a little bit. Some pieces we talked about with all of our admin as we built the budget were staffing considerations. Because during this current year, we ended up receiving more revenue than we budgeted for, we were able to bring back a lot of the classified staff that we had laid off. We didn't bring back quite all of it, and we didn't bring back a principal for the academy this year. So Susan has been 3 people over the last month and a half, 2 people before that. So we desperately need to find some coverage for those areas. So that was the topic of all of our admin meetings as we were building this budget. We kept everyone else. We've had some movement, and so the principals are working on, there's been a couple of retirees that have given us notice, and they're shuffling some people around that maybe weren't quite full-time and filling the gaps. But we're definitely not having to lay anybody off going into next year, which is a relief after last year. And Susan talked about building reserves. I have a slide to talk about how those are going to look for this year if you approve this. We've gotten through most of classified negotiations. We're with a tentative agreement for this year going into next year, so that's good. We don't have to worry about that much more this year. They're a great group to work with. They were straightforward and easy to negotiate with. There wasn't no huge asks.
That tentative agreement, it is inside of what you put
Yes,
in the budget?
it is. We had a gap to work under and got under that, so it was good. And we know we'll have some curriculum replacement to put in there. I was able to add just a little bit to our general fund curriculum adoption budget. And then we're using some SIA funds and $98 to help offset some needs there too. We know that our regional services through the ESDs, there's increased needs in the district with increased enrollment and the behavior and special needs that are coming in. But the cost of those are going up, and the severe disabilities money that we get as a district to help offset the costs for our people is going down. So we've had to offset that. The severe disabilities grant just is having to spread out more across all the districts that come. That money comes from the ESD to help offset some of our severe disabilities costs, and there's just not as much to go around as there used to be. So we've had to plan for that. At the board meeting next week, Joey's going to talk a little bit more about facility planning, so I don't want to steal his thunder for the board meeting, but we're talking about that in this budget meeting. Susan talked about the nutrition services and how that's going. I've been keeping a tally, running cash balance for that fund, and we started off with a positive fund balance for nutrition services, and I don't think we're going to end the year with a positive fund balance, so we'll have to probably supplement the general fund a bit for nutrition services. And then there's always the unfunded mandates handed down from the state, new Senate bills, House bills that pass along all the fun things that we have to look at. We have our integrated guidance and early literacy grant funding that we're working with. Those are the student investment account, 198, Perkins for CTE, early literacy grants, all these sources of funding that all have to come together and fall under one plan. But you still have to account for all the funds separately. So it's a bit of a juggle, it's a pain. But it definitely helps support all of the additional programs that we try to add lately. And then the ever-present inflation that we have to deal with, increased costs for supplies and services are just exponential, it feels like. Our insurance, liability insurance for the district, they told us to plan for 13 to 15% increase for that. Custodial supplies have gone up 5 to 6, 7%, and just the increase in substitute costs. We've had more substitutes we've had to cover. It's just have to fit it all in. And then when we get to the slide where we're talking about some of the transfers that we're doing, we might talk a little bit more about our non-K-12 programming, the pool and preschool, where it's not funded through the state, so we take from our general fund. We're talking about enrollment, and these are our enrollment numbers. 22, 23, and in the past are actual reported ADM. The 23, 24 numbers, what I showed you before, that was from about November. We're a little bit lower than that now, just because the end of the year slide, it always goes down third trimester in the high school. Some kids are done or they don't complete.
They're done for a good reason or what?
So right now, I think the enrollment report that we'll give to the board, I think we're at 1665. So we've lost a few throughout the year, but we're still higher than what we had anticipated for this year. And next year, we're estimating, we've got all the principals together and talked about what they anticipate for enrollment needs, and we've talked about inter-district transfers and how we had a lot this year. We cut it off for a while just to help things stabilize, but they still anticipated an increase across the district going into next year by about 20 or 30 students, not a huge increase. So we'll have to plan for that.
Is this typical, looking across a decade, students have changed by 100. Is that consistent agreement? I'm surprised that there's not a bigger jump than 100 kids in a decade.
Oh, I think.
Or it's COVID, the COVID drop.
Yeah.
No, I'm just looking at the first one. Well, I know.
14, 15 to now. I think back in the early 2000s, the district was up even higher than that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's fluctuating.
Yeah, when I was teaching back, yeah, it would have been late 90s, maybe early 2000, we were well over 1,800 in the district, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where, I don't remember exactly, but I know, I don't think we've ever hit 2,000, but I think we were over 1,800 for sure.
There's fluctuations in birth rates and the economy.
Well, and Clemens shut down their program, that slowed the influx to the district for sure.
Yeah. But I think if we showed a graph of neighboring districts, it probably went up a bit, COVID hit, and it maybe increased some, but most districts have a pretty declining progression over the next few years.
And these don't include Kings Valley.
Those numbers do include, yes, it does include Kings Valley. Okay, that's our total enrollment.
Okay.
So, unless there's questions about some of the budget considerations or how we talked about the budget, I thought I would just kind of reiterate, these are the slides that I showed you for last year's budget, and I just redid them for this year to kind of show where everything comes from and how it looks in the budget. So on the left are the total budgeted resources, which is our revenue for all funds for 24-25, estimated, and remember that a budget is estimate. I just listened to the OSBA budget webinar that we were talking about, and she said, as soon as you publish it, it's wrong, because they are changes. So just remember, budget is an estimate. And so you can see that 27 million is our general fund, is made up of all of those pieces on the right-hand side. Property taxes, state school fund, small fees that we collect, local option taxes, and then our beginning fund balance that will roll over from this year to next year, which has grown, it will grow.
Are we still carrying this toward participation fee?
We did do a $50 participation fee this year, and we plan on doing it again next year. It's to help to offset the increase in officials. Yeah. It's not, I think, before COVID, we were a graduated rate, but it started at, I think, almost 200 for member athlete and then it down. So this is just a small amount, and we did collect about 25,000 this year. So you can see that the general fund is almost 50% of the total budget. It's gone down a little bit this year versus last year. And that's because of that debt service fund, the 300 line. That's going to continue to grow until we pay off our capital bond, because we have that sinking fund. So you can see that the state school fund is 30% of the total budget and 62% of the general fund.
Just out of curiosity, the 300, where is that kept?
We have two investment accounts. The sinking fund is kept in LGIP account. I'm going to talk about that a little bit too, a little bit later.
No
But
problem.
yeah, so it's kept in an investment account. A little hard to see up here again, but this is our most recent estimate from the state for our state school fund grants. And you can see that the general purpose grant per student is well over $10,000. When we started last year, talking about the budget for this current year, it was $9,500, I think, per student. So it's increased quite a bit. Our current estimate is the $60.6 million. And the current estimate for this current year is now at $15.1 million. When we budgeted, we were at 14.5, I think. So because of the increased enrollment and for the district, the decreased enrollment around the state, our estimate has gone up. So that's helped offset some of the increase in costs for the year. And you can see the factors up here that what weigh into the estimate calculations. Our teacher experience rating has gone up. When we first did the estimate for 23-24, this current year, I think we were at 0.95, and so we've gone up to 1.43, which is based on the statewide average of teacher experience, and then they take our average, and that helps. It just plays into that calculation on that general purpose grant line for the total amount again. And then up in the top left hand, you can see the local revenues. We anticipate that property taxes will increase 3%. That's about what I calculated for this year, and it's held pretty true. We'll go forward with that next year. Our common school fund is decided by the state, and with the new HCP that could be put into place, that could affect all counties across the state. I saw an article that said Benton County shouldn't change that much. The counties with bigger land bases, Tillamook and Clatsop County, I think they will see a bigger swing in their common school fund because of that forced funding. I don't see ours changing that much if that HCP gets passed and things change on how the timber harvest is going to go across the state. And then those county school funds and state managed timber lines are best guesses because they can come in one year and not the next. Like this year we got 400,000 for state managed timber, but some years we get none. So it's a kind of a placeholder. And then, like we said, expenditures have to equal revenue for our budget. So all of the expenses over here by fund, which match each fund for revenue. And then I have it shown in functions and then in objects. Objects are like the what we're getting, salaries, supplies. Functions are the areas where those pieces are spent. And then when we do the appropriations, when the board sets the appropriations, we appropriate by function per fund. So we'll appropriate the general fund 100 and all of the functions that start with a 1 for the 1,000s, that will be one appropriation. So we have to make sure that we're capturing things pretty accurately with some room to maneuver a little bit. And I just put this together. It was kind of interesting to see what we have increased from the 23-24 budgeted amounts to the 24-25 budgeted amounts. But knowing that 23-24, this current year, those budgeted amounts are not accurate because our estimates have, our revenue has increased. You can see the differences on the right-hand side. But we figured an increase in revenue of about 2.5 million for the general fund. And then you could see where everything has increased in cost down below, or what we're having to set aside in the contingency and unappropriated fund balance. So it doesn't take long to eat up $2.5 million in salaries and payroll cost increases alone. But again, we're fortunate that we're in a spot where we can cover all of those this year.
Corporations are making record profits, so okay. Big reason why our inflation is.
Well, the state is too. All of the economic forecasts coming from the state show that the state is booming.
As much as I love that kicker check, I would really like them to budget better at the state level. Thank you.
There are a lot of discussions about revising the current service level calculations for the state. They're asking for a lot of input across all the districts. I think I heard that for most state agencies, they budget realistically for increases for the next year. And for education, they budgeted like a 2.5–3% increase. And nobody understands.
They operated on like a 20-year regression model.
Yeah.
They don't do with any of the other state agencies. So the conversation is, come back into reality, please.
Even if we have fewer students, we still have to provide the services to the students we have, and it still costs.
It still costs more.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Yeah, you're right. You got it.
So we're all reporting what that actual increase should be, at least a base level of an increase from one year to the next, or from biennium to biennium. Yeah.
We're paying less overall for staff. I mean, we're a people business, so we expect to spend most of our money on staff, but we're paying less overall on staff. I mean, I remember back when I early days of my teaching, our budget was, we were at 80% or more for staff expenditures. Now we're at 70,
We're about 75.
75, okay,
Yeah.
so we've dropped. Part of that is we have to spend more on technology, we have to spend more on lots of stuff, so, but still, it's just like,
Yeah, it is. So part of the budget are these transfers. We take from the general fund to fund other funds in here, and you can see it in your, this was one of the pages that didn't print well. So you can see the amounts here, and I'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of the correct one. But you can see we take from the general fund and put to these other funds to fund those programs. Some of them are education pieces, and then some of them are our other operations. We decided this year that we were going to try to put a bit into preschool. We've had some discussions with Straight North Families on how preschool is going to work next year. We do get some KPI,
Kindergarten Partnership and Innovation.
we get a small amount of funding from them to help cover some preschools for costs. Strength North Families comes together, they have some funding that they put into it. But we talked about, we've always had to put some into preschool. We're going to earmark a piece to begin with, and then plan from that.
We're also working with the Early Learning Hub in the area, who's got some resource that it's spending this year kind of thing. And so we're gonna sit down with them and be able to see what kind of money we can get to be able to subsidize the preschool where it doesn't have to come from our general fund. Because you know, that's a pittance, that's a token of putting something there, because it certainly costs us more and has costed us more in the past. And so the jury's still out in where we are. I mean, we're looking at the size of the preschool. Do we need to cut back on numbers of students? Do we need to charge fees for students participating? So everything's being looked at to be able to make that determination, so we know heading into the fall what's happening at preschool.
And the other funds like that is our pool operations fund. We've set aside $50,000 to $75,000 each year to that. We get an endowment, $50,000 from the Benton Community Foundation to help fund it, and we bring in fees. But if we keep putting in just the same amount and everything costs right, we're gonna have to reduce programming unless we can figure out some other funding sources for it. And our new pool director is doing a great job of trying to work with getting the staff in the right spots and increase programming, but every time you increase a program and you don't have much attendance, you're going backwards. So we're working with her on that also. Some of the other funds we need to put into food service, we have a mandatory amount that we have to match each year. ODE tells us how much that is. So I put that 10,000 in there. We may have to look as we start the year after this year ends and see if we might have to do something a little bit more than that, but that's an amount to start with. I'll come back to reserves. We have our capital projects fund. I'm gonna put that much in there. We have a little bit remaining. I have another slide that talks about that. For the program projects for next year. The technology replacement fund, that one has definitely increased. After our board presentation, I want to make sure to put a little bit more in there. It's not enough to cover what we need, but it's a good start. Unemployment this year, we've never had to put much away in this. It's an internal service fund where we hold funds to pay for unemployment because we're self-insured. So everybody that claims, we just pay the state after they've made the claim. We don't charge off of their paycheck. We don't pull a certain amount. We can look into that, but this is how we've always been set up. And with new legislation that says that classified staff can claim unemployment during break periods, we had to make something and put in here. We did a calculation that showed that the ultimate maximum, if everybody that could claim, did claim, it could be over $200,000. I don't feel like we'll be there. I don't feel like our union will do that, but I needed to have something in there. And then if we don't use it, we can adjust. We can move that around. we have our classified pet fund, which is their insurance reserve account and professional development fund that we put money into, and that's a part of their negotiated agreement. Part of the tentative agreement this year is that it's capped at 50,000. So we know ahead of time how much is going to go in there. It's not based on calculation like it has been in the past. And then the licensed insurance pool, that's also in their negotiated agreement, 65,000. It's a lot of money that comes out of the general fund just to fund these other pieces, but there's still district operations that have to be there. A quick slide about the capital projects fund. I know Joey's going to come to the board, and I don't want to put too much in here, so you guys would be interested in his talk. So part of what is remaining and will roll over to next year is the $50,000 that we're still holding for the covered play area at Clemens. I'm not sure if that will be billed for 23-24 yet, or 24-25, so I need to make sure it's accounted for both years, just because of the timing of the project. It's supposed to be done by the end of August. If we don't close the books before then, we can pay it in 23-24. If the books are closed, we have to account for it in 24-25. So I've included it, the whole thing, in 24-25, just to cover our basis for appropriation pieces. But we've been talking with Joey about things that need to be done, and a lot of it is inclusive of technology and facilities and working for a plan into the future. So I think you'll find this presentation helpful. And he's pleased to see that he has some more to work with. The past few years, it's been pretty small for what we've had for capital projects. So we have definitely some work to do around the district.
Is there a list of those projects, some of them you guys would like to share?
Yeah, he'll have some to share at the board meeting. And then you all heard, the board heard technology did a presentation last month on the needs around the district, and they're pretty immense. He has a 12 to 18 month plan, and then he has a 18 to 36 month plan of things that have to be replaced. Staff machines, some computer lab machines, classroom technologies like our projector, and I think this one might be one that needs to be looked at because it's a little dim. And student Chromebooks. There's also some security pieces. We need to do a new key card system around the district and hope to integrate that in our security system. We need a new phone system. And all of the server and software licensing pieces the cost of those are skyrocketing. They are working very hard to come up with creative ways to solve problems. They're being very innovative, and districts around the area are watching our technology group on some of the things they're doing. They built their own server for one piece of the district. Instead of spending, it was $50,000 or $60,000, I think, for the server. They built it for less than 15 to do a function that backup server that we needed. So they're working really hard, but there's a lot that needs to be covered. So we have 185,000, that will be a good dent. We have some grant funds, some SIA, student investment account funds to help with this. And we're searching out other grants to help with technology upgrades as well. So, good piece. And then some of the other pieces that we don't typically talk about in the budget meeting, but I wanted to share a little bit of information. Bonds, we have two outstanding large bonds. We have our capital bond that we started in 2010 for the high school plus other buildings. I have a little bit more to talk about that on the next slide. And then we have our PERS bond, which was issued in 2011 that helps offset the unfunded liability. PERS is, growing exponentially, and we have pensions to cover. So we took out a bond to help keep our PERS rates low for a set amount of years. That bond will be paid off in 2027, so we need to research what we want to do going forward. But I did some research on what we have been collecting over the years for that PERS bond payment, and we have been collecting too much. It's been at a set rate before we got here. And just a new understanding of how that bond works, I was able to decrease the amount that we're collecting in a month. And so it's lowered our total payroll cost expenditures for this year and going forward. So that's been a help too, to help save some cash for the district. It was just one of those things that you just keep doing the same every year, and finally looked into it and had a question about it and got some help from OASBO, and way too much. So as we go forward, I'm going to collect enough just to get us to the end. So it was one of those aha moments. And Joe, you asked about investments. So we have 2 investment accounts, the local government investment pool, LGIP accounts. They're held in trust. We have our general account where all of our state school fund, property tax revenue, and it's our general holding account that we just kind of an operating fund. And that is one account. The other account is the sinking fund for the bond. And that's where we put our set-aside deposit every year into that. And then for years, that account got, well, during COVID, it was low, less than 1%. And now we're up to getting 5% interest. And with that sinking fund balance growing, it's going to be $17 million by the end of this year, next year. That's a significant amount of interest, so that helps offset what we have to pull from the taxpayers. So I have, next slide kind of goes over that. And then an update about ESSER, that's our COVID Relief Fund, Fund 219. We were anticipated to finish spending it this year, 23-24, but we still have that capital project that we said has to be done by August 30th. ESSER funding has to be spent and claimed by September 30th. So I still accounted for that in the new budget for 24-25, just to have it set so we can appropriate it paid if we need to. If we don't get it paid in 23-24. So this is a quick, brief breakdown of our sinking fund for the capital bond. We have a $20 million bill coming due in 2027. And so they, when they originated the bond, they said we need to set aside these amounts each year, which is on the left, to have the scheduled $20 million at the end of the bond period. We've been setting that aside, but the interest we've earned has helped build that fund. So by the end of this year, I expect us to have almost 500, 600,000 more than we need. So we can either collect a little bit less each year going forward, or in the last year, we may not need to collect much at all to have the last bond payment. So when I calculated the tax levy, the bond levy for this year, I did it based on that $2,325,000. And then it's offset a bit by interest and incentives that we get for the bond program. But then the next 2 years, I think we need to look at it realistically and see if we still need to keep it set at that full set-aside deposit and do a projection on how it's going to look by 2027. And that probably didn't explain it nearly to the depth that you guys need to understand it all, but it's helped me to see the side-by-side of where we're going with that and what the interest is doing to help build that sinking fund. And then a quick show of what we have for reserves. Because we got a little bit more revenue this year, we decided to start setting aside for reserves. We put facilities, technology, we set a vehicle one, and the tennis court maintenance, that's not general fund dollars that go in there. We get $2,000 a year from the city to help maintain the tennis courts, I think for a 10-year period after they were built. So I'm holding that there so we can see, we can watch how that works. We're using funds from that to help any kind of cleaning or maintenance that has to be done, but it's just a good way to track that. We weren't tracking it. We were doing it in the general fund. I like seeing it here now. Our proposed transfers for this year are in the second column, and so by the end of 24-25, I predict us to have that amount in the reserve accounts, which is better than I think. So if you guys approve of that, it will be very helpful for this coming up year.
And why do you need a vehicle fund? Do we have district?
Driver's ed.
Driver's ed, thank
We
you.
have 4 vehicles that we use daily. One is driver's ed, we have one that's used for special ed. We have the maintenance vehicles, yeah.
Thanks.
And we had $784 set aside in that before this year.
Good money.
Well, you get driver's ed
That's not even a set of tires.
No,
I know.
not even a scooter. No, that's why that.
Yes, I just got a set of tires for almost exactly that, maybe $10 more.
You're lucky.
True black tires. No. I got them from Costco. They're nice. They're good truck tires, man.
So that was a quick down and dirty through what we have for the proposed budget. Most of it is concentrated on the general fund, but knowing that we have lots of special revenue funds, grants, and our trust and agency funds that we fund the insurance reserves for the 2 different unions. There's a lot in that proposed document. So I would be open to any questions.
So the dollars that are giving the return on investment to pay off the bond, if that interest rate changes and we don't get as good, how do you calculate?
So I calculate what goes into the sinking fund each year based on the scheduled set aside deposit minus the interest that we earned from the previous year. So then I'm always looking back a year on what I need to put in for the current year. But I calculate the levy amount based on that scheduled set aside and what we know that we have to pay in interest and what we're getting on, we get a bond incentive, which almost offsets what we have to pay for interest.
I wondered how that.
Yeah.
In consideration in terms of how many dollars to pay and also the implication on that.
Yeah. So when we get down to the last year, we're gonna have to look at it really close and make sure that we don't over collect. We don't have it sitting there, and then the board would have to decide what to do with it at that point. But I think with the way the investments are going now, that last year could be fairly minimal. But then after that last year, we still have 3 more years of bond payments coming in for the last section of the bond. There's a third part. Sorry, I have to close the. Thank you. That help?
I was just gonna say that too, especially.
And then the surf maintenance, is that a track?
No, so they're raising funds to try to turf the baseball and softball field. And one of the questions they asked the board was that we would set aside a certain amount each year to help with future maintenance or replacement. $5,000 a year isn't going to cover a lot, but that's about what we spend in turfus for the baseball field and softball field to help with, yeah. So,
nothing about the property.
no.
I have one question, and obviously the bargaining hasn't ended for classified yet, but on the classified employee professional development fund, there's the beginning fund balance and then the interfund transfers. That beginning fund balance, so again, I get confused about things, I'll admit it, but should the total requirements of that still be at 80, or did we agree that it was going, or are we about to agree?
We agreed, my
Number now.
understanding was that we agreed to put 50,000 in there each year because the use fluctuates a little bit each year. Some of it goes to insurance and some of it can go to professional development. It doesn't mean we can't revisit it, but I know that this year they should have that 30,000 remaining.
Okay,
The
so I'm
agreement.
gonna stay in there. Okay.
So it won't, it's not like the license one where that's 65,000 a year.
And I thought that was what it was, so I'm like, okay, that's a misunderstanding.
So if there's something left, then we just supplement that up to 50 then?
No, we still put 50 in.
We'll put 50 in each year.
Gotcha.
I think we'll need to watch it closely to make sure that they're actually using the other portion of it that's not used for insurance, to make sure that it's used for the professional development.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know what page it's on, district reserves,
Mhm.
542,784, 280. What is non-consumable items for facilities?
Sandy had a question. So non-consumable are items that are not used up in the year. So it could be, it's a placeholder for items that are more than $1,000, or it could be facility improvements. At this point, it was just a placeholder to hold that amount. But it would be anything that's not used up in a year is what a non-consumable object code is for. I wouldn't see us using those reserve amounts for supplies and services. That would just be a one and done. It would be if we had to buy a new boiler or something like that.
Well, hopefully we're done by
I
it.
hope so. Maybe you
I think we replaced most of them now.
Yeah.
guys. Okay, I will, thank you.
Thank
See you,
you.
Joe.
Joe.
We're holding $420,667 in an account from the sale of Kings Valley Charter School, is that correct?
That's our Kings Valley escrow account, where they're still paying into?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll continue to grow.
Okay. And somewhere I read it and I'm not finding it. How much are you putting into, district facilities as,
The capital, or not capital, so the capital improvement fund will be the facilities, well, that's the reserve is the facilities. Fund 400 is the capital projects fund, so it'll have about 400,000 this year, I think.
412?
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's just for projects down the road
that's for projects for next year.
for next year.
Yeah.
Are we putting anything away for projects down the road?
That's what the reserves, the 375,000 so far.
Okay.
Yeah. And then for day-to-day operation pieces, that's in the general fund, under function 2540. That's the custodial and maintenance salaries and everyday mowing and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
is in
I've seen
general
that
fund.
here. Looks like it went up from 164.46 FTE to 179.70, and most of that looked like it was in classified.
Yeah, it was.
Just
Because
bringing people back, is that what most of it is?
yeah, that initial, the one from last year included the layoffs that we had to do.
Yeah,
So we brought most of those back.
okay. And then the two in facilities is, we're bringing those back, or is that an add-on?
Those are the, bringing them back.
Bringing them back, okay. I don't think I have any other.
The thing that's jumped out at me over all of them versus the buses, how much the buses cost.
I know.
Is that not a lot
Yeah.
recently, or is that always been?
It's incrementally gone up, but it's been that hundreds of thousands, yeah.
Those bills were part of what's included on it, so it's approved payments, like,
Well, just
oh,
looking at
yeah.
like every month when the buses cost, it's good to like,
We do get reimbursement from the state, that's part of the state school fund, so we
We
get
get 7% reimbursement, but we don't set that rate, that's the bus companies that charge,
Right, the bus company charges the full rate,
yeah.
and then the state has a calculation to decide how much we get back in the state school fund, for the transportation grant.
Are there ever discussions about moving that kind of in-house versus using an external company?
We haven't talked about moving that one in-house yet. It's always up for discussion.
trying to present.
The capital investment investment to start that would be huge. Yeah, it would be big.
It would be more than, I think, our district can run.
I think so. Bringing food service in and organizing that this year was quite a bit, and that's pretty small for our district, but just getting the people in place and managing the newness of it, and then bringing in busing. It's not out of the question, they're definitely our district, so we don't have to help.
I'm suspecting that the rate,
Christopher,
the rate similar to.
nice to see your smiling face.
Per student.
We have Mid-Columbia,
Right.
we haven't gotten a bid from anybody else recently, but we have 2 more years. Yeah, this year and next year on our contract.
So we'll start looking at that point to be able to see what kind of deal they'll offer us or what another company will do.
Some company, another in the county might be okay too.
They have definitely reached out.
Yeah,
Who are they? Per student.
Students.
Oh, right.
Oh, student transportation.
Yes.
Yeah, not first student, we had first student. for a
That
while.
must be why we're getting that per student.
Since we're on the Board of Education, the 2310 Board of Education Services, medical insurance, $16,800.
That's the agreement that was made by the board to pay for insurance after retirement. That's where we've been paying it out of. So I added it to the budget for next year. The personnel decision.
So that's still trying to figure out what that is. Retirees?
It's the one that was decided by the board to continue for 1 more year.
Okay. Oh, got it.
Don't worry, just got right here.
Why they getting the one now?
That wasn't that new when I was on there.
Since we're talking about medical insurance, can I interrupt really quick, Rick?
Yeah.
I don't know which page it was on. So we have a fund that pays people that opt out of our medical insurance, and then we pay an opt-out bonus or incentive or whatever. Do those cost you more than it would cost to give them insurance?
No. If a person opts out, it costs less than.
Even after we pay an incentive for them to opt out?
Yeah. So typical premiums for a single person under our insurance would be $700 to $800 a month. And the opt-out incentives are around $300 a month. So it is, yeah. And we don't pay the difference in what is not used in the cap for anybody. Some districts do that, but we don't. So that's a bit of a savings in the premium.
Okay, yeah, I was curious.
Is that $300, is that same in negotiations?
Yep.
I just thought that was high, I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, that's negotiable.
Yeah, I figured that. That was good, that's for insurance, that's.
Okay. That is sure all my questions.
I have a couple more.
Okay.
I'm looking at the PMS student buddy funds, and I'm just curious because I'm the actuals in 2021-22, looks like we budgeted 25 and we ended up with an 80,000 deficit. And then in 22-23, we ended up with a $65,000 deficit.
So those ones, the student body funds are a little bit different than a general fund account. Those negatives are the ending fund balance that rolls into the next year. It's
Okay.
not a deficit. It's what's left over and rolls into the next year, is what it's predicted.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way the budget program shows it, and I saw that after I printed it, that it should have a note on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not a deficit. It's just a balance that rolls into the next year.
Okay, good, that makes sense, because if it was a deficit, I wondered why we would have been proposing less this year, or next year than this year, if we have a deficit the 2 years prior.
Right.
Why in the world are they spending so much?
Yeah, I know.
There's just like their own little checking account, what is it?
And I figured it was,
Yeah, comes and goes. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand it.
I had the same exact question last year. I was
Yeah.
like, this doesn't mean a good thing.
Yeah,
right.
My brain reads a bunch
Right,
of
exactly.
Yeah, and I think I made a note last year to probably put a note, and I can do that in the adopted budget too. So it just has a little footnote that says what that means.
So does that apply to all accounts that show a deficit? Is that all what we're rolling over? Because it shows it on others too, like debt service, all other funds, debt service.
The debt service one does because that does have a big rolling ending fund balance that rolls into the next year.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I think that was a question that Christopher asked last year.
And it's the same for the capital projects fund. I'm looking at 2543, parent upkeep of ground services. We don't have anything budgeted for that.
Is that in the 400?
400.
It could just be that I was simplifying some of the
Okay,
accounting numbers.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious, because I knew we had talked about having, you know, kind of a reserve fund built up for that kind of stuff, so. All right,
What do we do on the Terry Selby memorial? What is that?
That's, we have an endowment donation that comes in every year. That was what was presented last board meeting. That money goes into just a special fund, and then the forestry program uses it to buy supplies and equipment.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just kind of a common goal, but we keep
That's
it in
important
that.
in natural resources.
Yeah, and Terry Selby, we just want to hold it there, so.
Yeah.
Separate it.
I just want to make sure that
Yep.
I was having the right thing. Okay.
so I was looking at the same thing on the facility improvement fund for Kings Valley School, and it also shows,
And that's just the ending
same
fund balance.
thing.
Yep, that just goes
Okay.
forward. We don't use that fund for anything. We're just collecting the payments for the
Mhm.
property that they're paying for.
okay,
Yeah.
because we have a proposed budget for all that.
Well, we have to have a budget. I could put it as an ending fund balance line of prediction, but we have to have it so it offsets. It has to equal revenues.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Expenditures have to match, so.
Exactly, okay.
Well, and when we sold that King Valley, the board at that time said that we would like to hold that money for further purchases for the district if we grow enough that we need to buy some land somewhere to build another school or whatever, facility of some sort. Then we have at least some money to get started with.
Right.
And that way, then we didn't just put it in the general fund, and when the sale was done, the money was done, and it was like, we really didn't get anything out of that. So, I mean, that was the intent that the board had when that sale was made, is that money would be here to purchase something down the road.
Is that money in a CD or something? Is it sitting in an interest account or is it just sitting?
It's, the way the cash accounts work, we have, most of it sits in the LGIP investment account. So, oh no, sorry, the Kings Valley escrow account has its own account. It's in its own money market account. It's just, Sorry. So
We almost have enough to buy a 900 square foot house that needs a complete remodel.
But the way we have it set up, if during the year something did come up, it's appropriated, the board could approve to spend it that way.
Yeah.
You have to reappropriate it, so.
Yeah.
Not that we have any plans, but we're always talking about space needs.
Had a conversation just this week about space needs.
So that would go, I guess, is to something to think about. It's not necessarily land, but having purchased mobile buildings or something for expansion, if there was a time where we had to put in a modular or something.
Yeah, it would be a possibility. It would be a board decision at that point, yeah.
Another one I'm looking at is the internal service funds, 600, excuse me. Last year, we adopted 13,000 for that account. This year, we're looking at 151.
That's our unemployment, the unemployment fund that you're talking about? Yeah, so we'll do a transfer from the general fund into
Okay.
there to cover that. That's why it's so much more because of the legislation.
And then if we don't touch that, technology.
Yeah, it could be used for elsewhere if you don't need it for unemployment.
So I did just a very quick calculation from my notes from the last school board meeting about the technology requests, leaving off anything that was outside of the time frame of this budget. And it was $376,000 in requests, and that's not counting that, it was like $6,500 a year licensing, or something like that for one of the objects,
So I did
how do
increase,
we find $200,000 more?
well, some of it will be hopefully some grant funds,
Yes.
so we can research grants. We have a little bit in the student investment account, a little bit in 98 to help with offsetting those costs. But I think we're gonna have to do some technology research. And I think some of the, like the security system, the key card system, I think that will be a shared expense between technology and facilities. Because it's obviously.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so, I did increase the general fund technology function also because we know that licensing and software fees go up each year.
Yes.
So that's in too.
Even now, the phone system is in that, that's kind of more facilities and technology.
Yeah, that's one I see, kind of a combined one, and the key card system being combined, so I have to share across. Yeah. So, the questions are great, and we can continue asking questions, but the process goes, if we need to revise or amend the proposed budget, we can do that and have another meeting. If you guys are agreeable to the way the proposed budget is now, the committee can approve it and set approve the tax levies and bond levies.
Let's go back to number 10.
Okay.
Craig, since we do have somebody from the public here, if they have a comment or question.
Not entirely prepared. I guess the only thing I'll say is I'm going to come to the board next week to talk about next steps, preschool stuff, and jumping world families. So just advocated for any kind of support for that. But I'm glad to see that some of that is already.
You put some of that in the.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. And yeah, just very grateful for that partnership. But yeah, I think great speech. I know.
Save that for next week.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we covered that since there is a place here for public comment and question before we get to the approval of the plan, if appropriate, so.
And if we do want to approve it, I have the wording laid out that we can be, whoever makes the motion.
We have a motion to approve the budget as is.
Also, we approved the budget in a great, and I think they did a very good job and a lot of work with it.
Would you like to read that?
And you have a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
We have to.
Wait a I move that the budget committee of the Pomona School District approve the budget for the 24-25 fiscal year in the amount of $54,198,227. I move that the budget committee, oh, well, that's a different one, right?
There's two separate ones.
Okay, oh, there's two, okay, well, I'll do that one first, then, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the first motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, all approved? Aye. Okay, and I just will do the other one since I'm holding it right here. I move that the budget committee of the Pomona School District approve property taxes for the 24-25 fiscal year at the rate of $4.8664 per $1,000 of assessed value for the permanent rate tax levy and the amount of $150 per 1,000 of assessed value for the local option tax levy, and in the amount of $2,347,400 for the general obligation bond levy.
I'll second that.
Can I have a question on that? Just how do those rates compare to the previous year?
The permanent tax rate and the local option levy are taxing.
Yeah.
The bond levy amount is a little bit different, but not much different, $100,000.
So the property taxes aren't changing, but the budget is quite a bit higher.
Yeah, assessed value, yeah.
Here in a second. All in favor?
Thank you much.
It is approved, and the state levy is approved.
It's so much easier.
Which means we don't need another meeting.
No other meeting unless you guys need it. We'll be happy to not have one.
You did a great job. Well done. Very, very good.
I have one question. Do we want to move the budget hearing a month sooner, or do we still want to hold it?
No, we should do it in the board meeting.
June,
Yeah,
yeah,
just in case.
just in case something comes up.
Yeah, I think it
We'll wait till the last minute on that.
No curveballs allowed. Only changes that are positive. All right.
So we're canceling May 23rd, right?
Yeah, right. But we still have the budget hearing on June 20th at the school board. Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Very,
Oh.
very,
One reason why we can't have the budget hearing next week is because I have to public notice it before it happens, and it has to be 5 to 30 days, and I have to publish the budget, so I'm like,
Okay.
yeah. Just,
so,
That makes sense that it would be a longer
yes.
notice period.
Thank you all so much. It's so important to be able to look at and ask any questions.
but just Jen for all the work that she's put into it, and you put into it, everybody in the office has put into it, actually everybody in the district. Because you get feedback from the administrators, you get feedback from their schools, and so, I mean, it starts at the bottom and just works its way up. But you make it sound, when you put it in this, you make it look so easy to understand. I mean, it's just,
Oh, yeah.
you know, well, I can remember budgets before, you know, and budget documents that were like, what? You know, oh, no, seriously.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that it is much easy to understand.
Yeah.
Helps me too.
That is the noise my brain makes for the first 30 seconds. I look at it every year, and then I'm like, no, I know what all this means.
Well, it makes it so much easier for like Brian and Sandy,
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
first year
Yeah.
people looking at the budget and, you know, hopefully they can understand a lot more than I did in my first year.
Well, you know what, it's a little bit like this page.
That's a lovely page.
I was like, yeah, that's about right.
Would you like to adjourn the meeting?
You know,
Other questions? Officially adjourned.
All right, very good.
and thanks for being willing to be the chair.
Yes. And chilling the mice.